interesting to see like a no holds barred kind of takedown of traditional media model.
From the trailer, all I can remember is the part where he's like getting the crowd riled up and he's like, "We're mad as hell."
Just seeing like all the behind the scenes stuff with TYT, when I watch it on YouTube, you can see sort of the persona. It's like real, but it's also not all the background stuff and all the hard work that I know goes in every single day.
I think the work that TYT has done for the media industry in general is pretty revolutionary, and I'm really excited to see like the synthesis of all of that. All of that effort and that journey in a film
It's really important to sort of tell the narrative of where we started and how we're building so much momentum now for the largest news station on YouTube, and how we're going to keep on pushing through.
It said they were going to show him as a kid, so I'm super excited to see little Jake, because he's super cute now. I'd like to see him when he was young.
It was very funny. It did. Capture the essence of Cenk. It was great to hear the people around Cenk talk about Cenk, and were very frank.
I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was really interesting. I like how it started off in a way where you didn't know which way it was going to go, and then you learn more about him and the difficult choices that he had to make.
I loved it. I thought it was a really, really interesting movie. Even though knowing the whole story, it was humbling to see the whole thing unfold. And I think Andrew did a phenomenal job of editing it. It was just a really good watch.
This documentary really expressed how we feel as citizens, as middle class people. Is telling what the American people really feel. Like, you hear on the news or politics say the American people want this or this. That's not what we want. That's what they want.
It's always interesting to see the story with an audience and their reactions. It's funny the parts that they laugh at and the parts that I wince at.
It was great. It was very inspirational, especially the portion of when he was trying to get the job for MSNBC. I never knew, the difficulty behind the scenes that Cenk went through, trying to get his own show.
I kind of fell into it because I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just wanted to make a movie, and I thought this was a fascinating, inspiring, over-the-top, bombastic character. I thought his history up to that point was worth while the documentary, and it just so happened that I was able to capture the story that grew from a biopic into a look at the new media revolution with YouTube and the development of this, new media company, and ultimately corruption in politics and media.
I am TYT.
I am TYT.
I am TYT.
I am TYT. I am TYT.
I am mad as hell.
Well, the biggest issue is that they have these corporate sponsors and parent organizations that make money from money in politics. So a lot of the money in politics goes towards TV ads. So they don't want to upset the system. They kind of like the establishment. They are the establishment. So it's hard for them to get off of that political crack. And we're trying to nudge or push them off of it. You know, after one of the screenings, somebody came up to me and said that they thought that I had this drive all along, but that after '03, as they saw in the movie, in the Iraq invasion and the torture and all that, that my drive met its purpose. And I thought that was really, really well put. And I hadn't thought of it that way before, but I think that's exactly right. I'm driven, but now I'm driven with a job to do. The only reason I wouldn't want to get out of bed is if it's early. I'm not a morning person, but I never feel discouraged in that sense. I mean, I feel discouraged on a day when things are going badly, which there are many, right? But I know through experience that the answer is to push forward. There's one answer to success, and it's relentlessness. So if you have that, then you don't worry about the minor ups and downs, because you're going to have that. Everybody has ups and downs. The question is, how do you respond? And I know the answer to that. If you respond with relentlessness, you will get to success. I guess I'm lucky I was born relentless. It's kind of funny, but even like in elementary school, if the teacher asked for somebody to raise their hand, I would do it. If the kids wanted to fight, I'd step up. Right? Whatever the task was, I tackled it head on. So I'm super lucky. I didn't do anything to earn it. It's just who I am. Well, women are a huge part of online success, partly because they were typecast in traditional media because of gatekeepers. So gatekeepers have stereotypes about what a woman should do on television, right? Well, YouTube allows you to break through those stereotypes because you don't need those damn gatekeepers, and you can decide for yourself whatever you want to do. And it turns out that women are incredibly successful when you actually give them an opportunity to do things that drive them, that they're passionate about. So TYT is going global, and so we're going to start offices all over the world, whether it's TYT Spanish, Chinese, UK version. So all of that is coming, and so we wanted to get change in the media and the government here in the US, but there's a lot of change ahead of us. It's a whole wide world out there, and a lot of governments could use change.
I moved to Los Angeles in 2009, and I needed a job, and because I dropped out of school, I needed to kind of win over my parents' support for this kind of filmmaking. And my dad was a fan of this show called Young Turks, a weird Turkish dude on the internet. And so I started interning for them, and I thought Cenk was like such a fascinating, inspiring, over-the-top, bombastic character that I asked him on the first week of interning if I could maybe make a documentary about him. And he said he always wanted somebody to make a documentary in a very Cenk fashion. So I just started going behind the scenes. I wanted to justify my 9-to-5 job with what I was in LA to really do. So I worked for years as a director of the show while capturing these facts behind the scenes. And I got really lucky because it's an incredible story fell in front of me, and I was there just to capture it. And eventually I left the Young Turks and I became a filmmaker. difficult time. I get very lucky. I kept trying to finish the movie. I wanted to end, and things kept happening. They got MSNBC and then they lost it. They got current TV and then they lost it. They got 1 billion views and they built a new studio. And I kept trying to finish the movie, but I kept trying to having to keep following them and telling the story. And I'm really happy I did, because the way it ends now, I feel it's really full circle. It's much more satisfying. Current TV, for example, was doing good things like this, like putting Cenk on there, and they couldn't survive because the cable companies wouldn't renew their contracts because they had people like Cenk. And so, it's current TV fell through, and all good things fall through. And I think it's more important than ever for people like Cenk and filmmakers, to find stories like these and to tell them. I got lucky. I think there is a sequel. I think the story of Wolfpack, hopefully when it comes past, whenever that happens, maybe 10 years in the future, that's going to be an amazing story. But it's going to be this phenomenon and this big change, and there can't be one person on camera following one guy like I was with Jane. That was really easy. But with Wolfpack, this new media age, and with the amendment and everything, everyone all over the country is filming and YouTube and iPhone, and so everyone I talk to, I just say keep filming, film everything, document everything, and put it on the internet. And someday when this all happens, maybe it'll be me, maybe it'll be another filmmaker who can, take this crowdsourced giant amount of media from people all over the world and the country and create a story out of it. I think that'll be really important, because there's not one guy can't do it. I started when I was 8 years old, and this wasn't interested in anything else. I was interested in so many different things. My dad was a doctor, and I was interested in maybe being a doctor too. But if you go into any one specific thing, or you be a doctor, you take all that money and time in school, you gotta be that thing. You gotta be a doctor. And I was interested in medicine. I was interested in storytelling. I was interested in painting and art and visual art and music. Unfortunately, I don't have any music talent, but with film, I can work with music. I can direct music, and I'm interested in such a broad, variety of things that film was like the perfect thing that combined everything and allowed me to, tell a story about anything I wanted, like a doctor. I can't be a doctor, but I can do a story about it, or about Buddhism, or anything I want. When I was 8, I tried to make Terminator 3 before it was actually made, which I think mine was still fucking better. But my 8-year-old brain wanted it to look like the action movies I went to see in the theater. It didn't. It was me in a basement with plastic guns and plastic golf clubs. And so I was really distraught, and I asked my dad, how can I, as an 8-year-old kid in Wisconsin with no resources, how can I tell a good story, something that people might take seriously? He introduced me to Ken Burns and Harold Morris and the art of documentary. All I needed was a camera and an idea and a subject. And so I've always gone back to doing narrative and scripted films, and that's what I want to do, and they're a lot of fun. But documentary is this beautiful thing where you can do it independently. You can do something important and serious, because so often the time, truth is stranger than fiction. There's so many interesting stories. I want to do these action movies that were just sequels of action movies that I liked, like Star Wars and Terminator and stuff. I really there was stories right outside my back door that were incredible, and allowed me to make movies and be taken seriously as a filmmaker at a pretty young age. I don't know if that exists anymore. It was like cars on in my sandbox on tooth floss. I did another movie when I was 9 called Sledge. It was about Al Capone after he went to Alcatraz, and he, in real life got syphilis and died in prison. In my film, one of his henchmen smuggled in super steroids, and he became like a Hulk and escaped and started robbing banks with a sledgehammer. That trailer, if you find it, it's on YouTube. I'm not going to tell you that. If you search for Sledge, you might actually find it. And I play the good guy and the bad guy, and I directed it. And it's on YouTube. It's pretty amazing. The film doesn't exist. I think it died on a hard drive, but the trailer for it from my 9-year-old brain is forever immortalized on YouTube. It's never better or worse.
Service Cloud Knowledge lets your service agents and customers find the right answers to their questions right inside your website. With the ability to index articles on search engines, multimedia content, popular and related selections, even a place to leave feedback, all in any language. If the answer isn't easy to find, they can create a case that goes directly to an agent, who is presented with suggested articles from the Salesforce knowledge base. And other systems, like SharePoint, with the most relevant answers prioritized to help find the solution faster. The agent can then preview the article, add comments for peers, attach the article to the case, and share it with the customer. If for some reason the article doesn't exist, creating a new one is simple, with templates like FAQs, how-to guides, and troubleshooting tips, even versioning to better track your knowledge base. Experts can then add to the article, routing the managers for approval, instantly adding valuable solutions for customers and agents alike to access the answers they need wherever they are. And since it's KCS verified, you're able to apply industry best practices to build your knowledge base. Answer questions faster with Salesforce.
Well, I mean, it's really interesting to see what's going on behind the show. And in this instance, it's not just behind the show, it's behind the sort of development of the Young Turks in particular, but you're also tracking a real change in the media. I remember in 2005, 2006, I was doing radio, and the Young Turks were doing radio as well. I was looking at their videos, and I'm going like, this. I just don't know how this is going to go anywhere. And within a couple of years, I started to realize, like, oh my God, it's going somewhere. We should be doing this. And it's fascinating to see sort of the development of it. So in that respect, I think it's tracking not only the development of the show, but the development of media. I think TYT is changing the media. I think the media is just changing. And they're offering a solution. And I think over time, there's going to be attempts to copy it by corporations, but I think it's going to be really hard to do because on some level, corporations are looking for margins that I don't think we're going to see in the future with these type of media. And so they keep trying to crack that nut, but I think it's going to be tricky for them.
I loved it. I thought it was a really, really interesting movie, even though knowing the whole story, it was humbling to see the whole thing unfold, and I think Andrew did a phenomenal job of editing it. It was just really good. Plot, basically. Absolutely, yeah. I love the way that he's, his resilience. It's just so inspiring. He's always been a really great support and an influence. Always telling me that you have to do what you believe in. So he has been a big influence. He was, yeah. I mean, he used to get in fights over injustices even when he was a little kid. So he was, yeah. That's hard to say because his life is so packed. He's lived so much, been through so much that, I don't know if you can get all the details that are relevant into a movie, but this one tells the story quite eloquently, very nicely. He's always been opinionated, his friends will tell you, and he just keeps on going, God bless. It's interesting to note how he's evolved. He was noting about his voice when he did the earlier shows, and I can see it in his voice, in his stance. He has grown to be a real, like a TV star, like an actual broadcaster. You don't realize it when you look at the older ones, like the earlier ones. You see how he has changed a bit. Just so proud that he's saying the message that nobody will say. He told me, I remember when he graduated from college, I asked him what you were going to do with your life, and he said, "I'm going to change the world," and he's doing it. So. We all dote on him, and at first it must have been hard for my parents. Of course, going off the grid is not an easy thing to do, but I've always been very supportive. I've always found his courage, because I think it takes a lot of courage to be able to do that. Inspiring and, awe-inspiring, basically. He is what he was then. You don't really change. Like, the person you are stays the same. It's just how you're educated and how you express yourself, how your opinions are formed that changes. So he probably would have been a man just like this if he had stayed in Turkey. It's just he's expressing himself differently now. My father was a mechanical engineer, but he was in real estate. I'm an art historian. My mom has a home textile business, so we're not involved with media. He's the only one, and there's nobody else who's involved in media. So it was kind of a surprise that he chose this path. But we're all very ambitious, and we're entrepreneurs. That's the common link with the whole family.
It's a great question. So, look, I've been used to being dismissed for a long time. I started on public access, right? You don't get any more dismissed than that. And everybody in the movie says that show sucked. I disagree. I'm surprised at how whiny I sounded, right? Very high pitched when I was younger. But overall, I like the content.
Very entertaining.
And same thing with YouTube. Dismissed in the beginning, and yes, you're right. Now, all of a sudden, some of the largest media companies in the world have come talk to us privately and asked us, how in the world are you doing that? Because they've all tried, because they all know online video is the future and the present. They know that, right? Like in the movie, we had crossed 1 billion, now we've crossed 2 billion views, right? So, so trust me, like the memo has already been delivered, okay? And they understand, like, for example, CNN's average age is 63 for their audience. For Fox News, it's 68. Our average viewer age is 28. We're 40 years younger than Fox News is. So, half the media companies have gotten that memo. The other half will soon receive it. And so I feel terrific about the situation that we're in. Ben might be right. It might have been an accident. We might have been lucky. We might have been at the right time at the right place. But now everybody's beginning to understand that it is, in fact, the right place and the right time. A lot of people thought that Andrew was not going to get the movie done. it took a long time, 5 years, etc. And I like that because it matches the arc of my story, right? So the movie matches the subject of the movie, right? And there were a lot of doubters, and I love telling the story of my sister who said if I thought the movie was actually going to get made, I would have put on makeup. And apparently Steve-O was the biggest doubter of the movie and of me, which I didn't know until I saw the movie. But I never doubted. I knew Andrew was a great filmmaker, and somebody just asked me actually after the first screening about Andrew, and when did you know that he could get it done, right? Just in his career and his life, etc. And I said, what people don't know is that when Andrew worked for us, he continually pushed us to get better production quality and to look better and to present something that the audience wanted to see and loved to see, and that a huge part of that is visual. So that if you're going to do storytelling, you've got to do it right in all its facets. And so I knew that Andrew was a great storyteller, and I knew that he cared about his craft because I'd seen it with my own eyes. So I always believed. And despite that, when I saw the movie, I was still surprised at how great it was. And I don't mean from my perspective as a subject of the movie, because there was a lot of moments where I cringed, right? And there's a lot of moments that don't put me in the best of lights, but it's a movie. It's an independent movie. It's done by him. It's not done by us. And as I watched the movie, I learned things about myself. I learned things about our crew. And I just think that he told the story in a way that is actually even more accurate than I would have told it. And I would have tried my best to be as honest as possible, but I don't think I could have done it as well as he did. So I really want to give him a tremendous amount of credit for this. It was a great, great movie. Well, so yes and no. So, of course, I'm going to give you the cliche that it's about being young at heart and, and easy for a 44-year-old to say, you know, when you're not as young anymore. And, of course, The Young Turks is about an idea more than it is about demographic. Right? But, yeah, of course. There'll come a time, and that goes to the same point, which is it's about an idea. You don't need me to do it, right? There are a lot of people who do great shows that have the same kind of style. Whether it's Sam, it's Kyle Kalinske, it's John Idarola, you know, and so the show should be able to go on without me, and the idea should go on without me, and the network should go on without me. So if we're doing it right, then you shouldn't feel my absence too much, right? And so I hope that we build to that point, and I think that we're in the process of building to that point. So I love doing it. I want to do it as long as I can, but I also don't want to monopolize it. I don't want it to be just about me. That's the wrong idea.
The Salesforce console for Service Cloud lets agents everywhere deliver fast, personalized customers.
Well, look, we have always planned to be global. We already are global in the sense that 51% of our audience is outside of the United States of America. So I literally get stopped in the streets in Dublin, in Amsterdam, in London. Literally every time I go, every time I'm surprised by it. But there was like a little crowd that gathered around me in Dublin in the streets, which is amazing, right? It's a whole new world.
Enough for like a theater showing?
I'd
like to give it that one.
I think that sounds about right.
Whole new.
Right, yeah, in that case. So, but without taking too long, just get to the bottom line is that we do need a different level of resources for that. So we do want to go TYT even more global. So TYT China, TYT Latin America, TYT UK is probably next. But it's a little bit dependent on the resources we can raise. So our intent is there. I mean, we want to change the media. We want to change the government here in the U.S. Well, there's a lot of other governments to change and a lot of other media to change. So can't wait to do it. Can't wait. I've never punched anybody. Yeah. Okay, here, I'll tell you a funny story that I don't think I've ever told before. You see in the movie when I'm on MSNBC and I'm yelling at this guy who actually used to be a former Republican congressman because he was on talking about how we have to cut Social Security. And when I said, God damn it, we all paid into it our whole lives, right? And now you're just flippantly saying you're going to cut it? He said, well, the money's gone already. And so that really pissed me off. Like, you already spent the money and you're just being flippant. We paid into it, goddammit, right? So now, that was one of the more heated moments that I had. And I had a friend who was in the green room at MSNBC on that night. And Chris Matthews was actually going to do a rare 7 o'clock show that night. He normally did the show at the time at 5 o'clock, okay? And he was getting makeup on, and my friend's in the green room. And he sees me cutting off the guest, and Chris Matthews says, "Can you believe this guy? How rude." Like, I think that's your number one trait is cutting off guests, right? So yeah, there's been a lot of great confrontations. I view that as fun, and I don't see anything wrong with it. The reason why I obsess about money out of politics is that until you do that, all other issues aren't going to get solved. So as Lawrence Lessig says, it's not that it's the most important issue, it's that it's the first issue. You've got to solve that first, otherwise you can't solve everything else, right? So if all we got was that amendment to get money out of politics, I feel fairly confident that people would be amazed at the change you will then see flowing out of that amendment, right? So I hope that at that point, my guess is that I would be massively exhausted, and that my hope is that I could pass the baton on to others to then fight for all the policy changes that we've all been thirsting for, right? The second part of that is that no one candidate can do it on their own. You know, you really have to build it from the bottom up. And having dealt with politics for a long time, have become disillusioned with the candidates. You know, I mean, if Obama didn't disillusion you, bless your heart, but right? I mean, here's a guy who had a lot of placards that said change, right? And so he would argue that he changed things a little bit in terms of policy, but the reality is we were looking for a change in how things are done, right? And he didn't deliver that. So I love Bernie Sanders, and I wish him the best. I think Elizabeth Warren is, and I could be wrong about anything, but in my estimation, Elizabeth Warren would be a more compelling candidate, right? And I'm going to fight for her, and I'm going to root for her, and I'm going to do everything I can for her, because I think she's the better way to go. But I'm under no illusion that she can do it on her own. And I'm under no illusion that we should wait for politicians to save us. So as to how we decide what stories to do, how many of them to do, etc., we have a morning production meeting, which is supposed to be in the morning, but because I'm usually doing 28 other meetings, winds up being at 12 o'clock oftentimes, and Irina, our executive producer, wants to strangle me. But that's where we all get together. JR brings stories, John Idarola brings stories, and I bring stories, and then Anna, obviously, for the second hour, and other people chip in, and we discuss which we like the best, how we want to present them, etc. We don't have a conversation about how long it's going to take. That's usually dictated by the story. Sometimes it's a long Matt Taibbi piece that explains how J.P. Morgan robbed us all, and that's just going to take longer, right? Sometimes it's a quick hitting piece, and so that'll decide how that goes on air, right? But it is a collaborative effort, and we hear everybody out. I did that at MSNBC. I did it at Current. I do it at the Young Turks. So we do that together as well. So it's mentioned in the movie, but my ego's a funny thing, right? I mean, Sam, your talk shows too. Like, you got to have some sort of weird ego to be a talk show host, right? To say, like, what I think is right, and I got to tell everybody about it. That takes a weird kind of dude, right? But at the same time, I think that I've let go of my ego in saying I don't know best, and if I think I know best and we got to stick with only my decisions, we're not going to succeed as a company. I mean, one of the top reasons for our success as a company is that failure is an option, right? So it's like a cool line they say in the movies, failure is not an option, right? But actually you learn a ton from failure. You just got to let your ego go. Because a lot of people say, I'm right and I'm going to stick with it. That's a terrible idea. Be open to facts. That's part of why I became a progressive to begin with. And so to me, when everybody, as you see over and over in the movie, within the company is criticizing or coming up with new ideas, I do that so we can all win together. All these people put their faith in me, right? Jesus, JR, Dave, Ben, Jill, all the first set of workers work for free. For a long, long time, they didn't get paid at all, me included, but we were doing a show where me and Ben and later Jill got to speak a lot. But all the guys, how much faith do you have to work for free for so many years, right? And JR told me a story when we finally made it on the Current and he had a livable wage. And he said that a girlfriend told him, hey, they're taking you for a ride, These guys aren't telling you the truth. They just want to pay you low wages, no wages, whatever it is. And he said, I don't believe you, and we're going to break up. And so if they put that much faith in me, don't I owe it to them to put as much faith in them? So I've got to take what they say completely seriously, and I've got to listen to them. And I've got to trust them that they're going to help me get to the right decisions. Even if they disagree with me, even if I think that they're wrong, I've got to hear them out, and we've got to get to a consensus. And that's how we've done it all along. Trust in one another, and that's how we built it together. And by the way, one last thing. As you saw in the movie there, I don't know how often you watch the show, but I'm really hokey, and I always talk about, TYT Army, TYT Nation, the viewers and stuff. And it's true. You see it in the movie. We couldn't have done it without the audience. We just couldn't have done it. After we left Air America, we would have collapsed. But I asked the audience, can you please help us? And you put in just enough money for us to be able to survive, to tread water. So that includes the people in this room. You guys put your faith in us, your trust in us, and we want to do likewise for you guys. Too strong.
Yeah.
God bless.
We started out with Indiegogo, and a lot of those Indiegogo supporters are here in this room tonight. There's over 1,000 of them that helped pay for this film, and so I'm really grateful to you guys who have waited so long and put in money and trusted your faith in me. And then Indiegogo inspired other people to step up and help us, investors to come on board and help us finish it. And some of those investors are in the room as well, and I'm very grateful to all those people. And it only continues further because right now the film has distribution, and we're doing it in two ways. One's kind of untraditional and one's traditional. Right now I wanted the audience to be able to see it like this together on the big screen. And normally with documentaries, you just don't get them in a theater. And if you do, it's only New York or maybe LA. And so, we were doing with Gather Films, we were able to set up these screenings all across the country, and we've gone to a lot of them. They've been so much fun, and they've allowed the fans to get together and experience this. But we want people that are not fans of the Young Turks to watch this film, and that's really important to me. And we have the Oscilloscope Laboratories from right here in New York, who's distributing the film. I've been a fan of them forever. They did Exit to the Gift Shop and a ton of other great films. And they're releasing the film wide on all platforms on February 6th, iTunes, DVD, Blu-ray, eventually Netflix and TV, all that. And we're going to do like a 1-week theatrical traditional run to lead up to that. Because even if we have this play in like 200 theaters across the country, the like mainstream press and media doesn't count that as a theatrical run. We have to have it play for 1 week in New York to have that count. And we're going to do that because it's important to not only let the fans see it this way, but try to find other people that are into documentaries, media, politics to come see this. Because otherwise, there won't be much of an effect if only the fans watch it. And I'm so happy and so grateful that there is this fan base and they're allowing me to make this film. So thank you very much for all the support and for coming out. I appreciate it.
The Chakra Monster has been rampaging downtown Culver City for nearly 5 hours now. All of the great anime champions have...
For a long, long time, I would have been very happy to go on, but he never asked. And it's perfectly bizarre to me why he hasn't asked, right? And I'm now at the point where, screw him. And so I might not go on. I say that because I think, well, maybe. I'm keeping it real, right? Bill Maher's got the right ideas on 90% of the issues, and I like him, right? I don't like him. I like his ideas, right? And a lot of people are a lot more curmudgeon in real life than they are in what you see on TV, right? But TV's so much less relevant. And I feel like in the old days, it would have been like, oh, going on Bill Maher's show on HBO, that's so cool, right? Now, like, oh, okay, whatevs, right? I mean, Sam Harris was on Bill Maher's show. I don't know how many views they got, but I'd be surprised if it was 500,000. Sam Harris came on our show, and we got 500,000 people who watched that 3-hour interview with him, right? So it's old news.
To a certain extent, too, it's changed in the past 4 or 5 years, where there is no one media narrative like there was when the Young Turks started in 2002 and Air America came online in 2004. There was a media narrative that part of the mission for people like us was to try and break in and disrupt it and sort of just like loosen it and bust it apart. And now that doesn't exist in the same way. And I think a large part because of what's happening online. And so the relevance of going on a show like that, those people who watch Bill Maher, they are actually hearing divergent opinions, not just at Bill Maher, but in a multitude of places. So the relevance of being on a show like that, you can't go in there and drop a stink bomb like it used to be 10 years ago, where like, holy crap, someone said that on TV? No, that happens a lot now. Like, people hear it in a way that they didn't hear it before.
Let me continue to say things I shouldn't say. So part of the reason that happened is because of Keith Olbermann. He changed the tenor of the conversation. And that's another guy I do not like in real life. I just don't like him, okay? For very good reasons. He was really not very nice to us. But he was important to the national conversation, and for that, bless his heart forever, okay? So I don't have to like them as long as they do the right thing.
All right, we gotta go. Speaking of which, Keith just sent her to tell us that it's time to go.
Real quick, I gotta thank a couple people. I'm sorry. We'll be out there. We gotta move out to the lobby right away to get out of the theater. But a couple people made this event possible. Praveen and Amanda, you guys both worked so hard to make this happen. Thank you to you guys. And to all of you who got tickets and showed up, thank you guys all so much for coming out. We'll be outside, so meet us out there. Thank you guys very much.
Service Cloud Knowledge lets your service agents and customers find the right answers to their questions.
Well, I think that our goal informs everything we do. And so it's so part of our DNA now that I think it's a natural part of how it drives the content. Now, at the same time, let's also keep it real that it's not like every story we do is super important and is on the precipice of changing the government, right? And so it's okay to have fun with the news. And you don't have to be above, enjoying different news, whether it's salacious or just interesting, right? I've never found a sex study that I didn't find interesting. So, so when we describe the show to people who don't normally watch it, unlike you guys, right? We say it's fun, smart, and honest. And the fun part, a lot of people do, right? But you shouldn't let it go. I mean, so NPR, probably a lot of you like it. It's super dry to me. I'm not a big fan of banjo music. And it's just like, I feel like it's nonstop banjo. Like, is it okay that we get passionate and excited about the news? Can we, have a little fun with it, get angry with it, whatever it is that we're feeling as human beings? So that's the fun part. Not everybody does it. A lot of people do. Smart's harder to pull off, which NPR does great. Democracy Now! Does great. Sam does great, right? And so there's all these shows that we love in terms of that I watch, that I consume, right? Honest is, I think, the secret sauce in that recipe. And so that's probably the hardest thing to do. So you got to be honest with yourself, and sometimes brutally so. But that's the thing that drives you towards change, right? But it also informs how you do every single story, even if it's not about politics. If it's about sports and you say, hey, look, I'm going to be honest about the league. I'm going to be honest about the coaches, the players, etc. And if you watch a lot of sports commentary, you know that is not always the case, right? They cater to the league, and that same thing with celebrities. So that's in our DNA, and I think that helps us do both.
What was your favorite part of the movie? My favorite thing about Cenk is when he gets the Faustian bargain from Phil Griffin at MSNBC, and he says, look, we're going to put you on the weekend, there's garbage ratings, but we're going to pay you, 2 or 3 times as much money. We're going to give you $1 million to just tone it down, stop telling the truth. Cenk just looks at him and walks. And I think, seeing that story from beginning to end, that's what Mad as Hell is about. It's seeing that every point, it's not just that one decision moment, but at every point that Cenk got that Faustian bargain, be kind to the establishment, stop telling the truth, stop giving the audience what we want and we need to hear, which is the truth about what's going on in our politics and in our country. Cenk turned it down cold and kept on going with what he knew was true. And I think that's why he's successful. And that's why, he's mad as hell, and we're mad as hell too.
Is Kevin following you around? You're burning a lot of bridges. Was there ever a point in time where you were like, wait a minute, maybe I'm going to fail?
So that's a great question, and the answer to that is definitely and no. The question isn't whether you have moments of doubt. The question is, can you push past them? And on the other hand, I've always believed. And you can't go down this really, really long road if you don't ultimately believe. So I believed in terms of the Young Turks, in terms of what we were going to do in media. Of course, overall, I don't regret it. But are there moments that I regret the movie? Yeah. Hardball is not an excellent show. And God damn it, he caught me on the one day that I said that.
The reason why I was doing the movie was I moved out to Los Angeles from Wisconsin to be a filmmaker, and that's all I've ever wanted to do, and that's all I was passionate for. And I was very lucky to get a job with these guys because that allowed me to stay in the city and stay in Los Angeles and pay my bills. But I wanted to justify my 9-to-5 job with what I was there to do, which was make a movie. And right off the bat, in that first week, I just thought Cenk was such a fascinating person and this kind of enigmatic, bombastic, kind of great character.
You just saw the movie. What you think?
I thought it was awesome. It's the third time I've seen the movie, and I'm surprisingly still very interested in all the details. And it's really cool. It's a really good depiction of Cenk, especially since I was there and I know, what's real and what wasn't real, but most of it was real.
Did you take anything away from the movie that you plan on sort of carrying with you for the duration of your philosophy on not giving up? And when he was talking at the end about we are going to win, we're not going to be just almost there, and having no doubt, I thought that was excellent.